you doing, YouTube? So today we will be installing a dump valve plate on a diverter valve on my 2012 Mini Coupe John Cooper Works. Okay, so to begin with installing the dump valve plate, we'll have to remove the intake tube coming off the turbo with a flathead. There's two clamps on there. There's one right up here and there's one here, so we have to loosen those and remove this sensor, and we could pull this right out. Clamp on the turbo, clamp on the intake box side, and to remove this sensor, you lift up on the tab and pull it off. Okay, after you remove this sensor, slide that out. Pull that off. And you can just swing it off to the side like that, out of the way. Now that we got that removed, you can see the diverter valve is right over here on the bottom side of the turbo, held in with 3 Allen head bolts that are 5 millimeters. There is a clip on here, a wire harness, and you'll lift up the tab and slide it off, and it should come off fairly easy. Okay, so I got an 8 millimeter Allen, and I'm using a 1/4 inch ratchet with a small extension. I always like to get the bottom bolts out first. Let me do that now. Loosen it up. Once I got those two loose, I leave the top one tight, take off the ratchet, and just leave the extension on. You could loosen it up by hand from here. And leaving the top one tight holds everything in place so the screw doesn't get tough to pull out, because the part is now just free hanging, so I leave the top one tight. There's the bottom one. The one on the side, and now for the easy one right here up top, and the top one. This is the diverter valve with the old hardware. And I'll tell you what, I'm using this little swivel extension I got at Harbor Freight, and it really helps out a lot because you could swivel it at an angle, or if you push it down all the way, it holds it straight. Okay, so let's take a look at the stuff that came in the kit. We got new screws that we'll be using that are also 5 millimeter Allen heads. And what we're going to be doing is putting the diverter valve on top of the diverter valve plate, and you have to clock it. It only will fit on one way. So that's the way it'll fit. Okay, and then we're basically going to assemble it in the reverse steps that we took it off. And remember that this sensor pointed down. Let's go take a look and see what it looks like on the turbo. So if you look right down in there, that's where we will be installing the diverter valve plate and reassembling the diverter valve. It looks tight in there, but it's really not that bad. Okay, so let's clock the plate and the diverter valve. And I'm going to start by assembling it by putting on the top bolt first, which will make it easier to get the second ones in. But remember, this was the last one I took out, but it's going to be the first one I put in. Okay, so you can see the diverter valve. I got that set in there now, and it's kind of just barely hanging in there. We have this vacuum line that goes to our internal wastegate we have to look out for. So I'm going to grab the diverter valve now, install the top bolt first. And I'm just going to bring it all the way down, but let it sit under loosely. So if I need to adjust, I can move it around a little bit. Perfect. Now let's put the other 2 bolts in. Okay, now that we got all 3 started, we're going to snug them all the way down. Not super tight, just hand tight. We don't want to strip any of the threads out. Okay, to the bottom. The front one. And the top. Okay, so now we got the diverter valve back on, and we got the plate sandwiched between the turbo housing and the diverter valve. Now we got to reinstall the wiring harness on the diverter valve. You'll hear a little click when it's fully on place. Perfect, now we just gotta reassemble it the same way we took everything apart. Grab the intake tube and swoop it back over. Put the turbo side on. Give a little wiggle. Put the intake box side on. Perfect. Clip in our sensor again. Tighten the 2 hose clamps. There's the one on the intake box. Make sure the intake's all the way on the turbo. You don't want to see a big gap between the intake pipe and the turbo housing. Tighten that clamp. Tight, just hand tight, you don't want to over tighten it. You could break that hose clamp, then you'll have to get a new one. Let's see how it sounds. If you like this video, press the like button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, press the subscribe. Thank you for viewing.